Hi, welcome folks. Welcome to another edition of Cutler Corner. I'm State Representative Josh Cutler, proud to represent the 6th Plymouth District, Pembroke, Duxbury, and Hanson. In today's edition, we have a great guest, Lisa Cullity, who's the Pembroke Health Agent, is with us. And the health agent encompasses a lot of different things. So maybe, Lisa, you could start off by kind of telling us what you actually do, what your job entails.
Sure. The average health agent in a community our size, that being the size of Pembroke and Duxbury, it's actually all-encompassing. It's a much wider role than a lot of people are aware. You have your obvious, your septic roles, which is environmental health. Then you have your restaurant inspections, which is public health on the food service side. Then there's a lot of other details that go into it. Emergency management since 9/11 has become a much, much larger role for the health agents. Sheltering, emergency response, mass prophylaxis, which is to treat people if we were ever under some sort of biochemical attack, nuclear fallout, things of that nature. And then you can get into the more ambiguous. You get into the wider environmental health spectrum, the air qualities, the water qualities, the environmental and workplace safety, the aspect of it that comes into it. So
pretty much every part of your life, from where you go to eat, the water you drink, the toilet you flush, everything somehow touches your job, basically.
Unfortunately, it's a very broad umbrella, and in most communities our size, that's the way it needs to be. You need a very multitasking personality to handle all of that, because the average community won't hire, obviously, a different personnel for each one of those positions.
And you're the health agent. Mm-hmm. You are formerly a member of the Board of Health, elected for 17 years. Is that correct? So you've got a lot of background in these issues, huh?
I've served in Pembroke since I was 21.
So you were 21.
Yeah,
just a couple years ago. That's only a couple years.
Yeah, just a couple years ago, right? A couple decades ago is more like it, but thank you.
And you've lived in Pembroke for over 2 decades?
I was on the board shortly after I moved to Pembroke, so yes, just over 20 years, and I was on the Board of Health shortly after that, and then of course I've served as the agent for the last 2.5.
Super. Well, I want to kind of take us back to some of those different topics that you mentioned. Let's start off with the restaurant and food safety, maybe kind of delve into that a little bit. So are you out snooping around in restaurants?
Absolutely. I'm the Gordon Ramsay of Pembroke. What can I say?
Okay.
So yes.
Tell us about that. How does that work?
Quite simply, every food service establishment is inspected twice a year for overall health, cleanliness, food handling practices. People always say, well, what do you actually do when you go in? And I hate to say this, but it's really kind of commonsensical. You're looking for overall cleanliness. You're looking to see that all the cooking surfaces are maintained, that the floors are maintained, they're the appropriate level of cleanliness, safety, that there aren't things that are unsafe being stored near food goods. And then the other part of that is that foods are always at the appropriate temperature, both cold storage wise, so obviously you're not getting salmonella, E. coli, things like that, but that also the establishment that's preparing the food is doing so within the guidelines of the Mass Department of Public Health, that food is brought to the appropriate temperature before it's served so that it's safe to eat. And it seems very in-depth, but a lot of it is common sense. A lot of it is knowing about your foodborne illnesses and making sure that every establishment preparing food is doing so in a way that's safe.
And how do you actually know about the temperature stuff? Like, are you going in and
you study and learn? Yeah, actually, I do. I have an infrared. I have an infrared thermometer. It's literally a thermometer gun. And
gun.
It is a thermometer gun. It has a little red laser and everything.
So you can
and it takes a
point it and
it'll take the temperature of anything, from hand washing water being at 110 degrees to a refrigerator unit being below 40 degrees.
How far
to a
away can it be and still read the temperature?
I've successfully used it at about 20 feet. So
now when you
I've never tested to see how far it'll go.
When you go into these restaurants, do they know you're coming, or?
No, there's no announcement. I can walk in at any time that they're open and serving, and walk into the backside.
They have to accommodate you.
They could refuse me. That would not be a good choice on their part.
Right. That would not be.
That would not be a good choice.
And so you have these the equipment and stuff, and you can just do it. And how long does an inspection take?
It really depends on the size of the facility. Yeah. A small food service establishment can literally be completed in under 30 minutes.
Oh, really? Okay.
Something like the Longhorn, a much larger 3-station restaurant, would take me a good hour and a half to work my way through all the food stations and all the cold and hot storage that they have.
Do you have someone helping you do this, or do you have to do it all?
No, this is all solo. Every septic inspection, every restaurant inspection, every disease research, it's all done right here.
And how many restaurants are there in Pembroke, just roughly?
Full service food establishments, I want to say there's right around 76. That is establishments that take raw food all the way to heated food production. And there's another 32, 33 that just do the packaged thing. And then there's about 5 or 6 supermarket style.
Wow, that seems like a tremendous amount.
It's more than you think.
76 food service? Is that what?
Everyone that prepares food. If you prepare food and hand it to the public, from the coffee shack to the pizza shop to your 99.
Okay, so any kind of restaurant and pizza, anything.
Even Dairy Twist, that's my favorite inspection. Go right on record with that right now.
I hope you do that in the sun, July.
Of course, of course I do.
Now you're allowed, you have to have samples, of course, right, to judge.
Actually, I don't take samples from any establishment, but I will tell you when I'm done with Dairy Twist, I do make a purchase.
Okay. Well, I would think you would need to sample the food to make sure it's okay. Right? That'd be logical.
I actually frequent most of the, some health agents have a different opinion. I actually frequent a lot of Pembroke establishments and have a really good rapport with their owners.
That speaks well of the restaurants, because if they were getting if
they're getting bad remarks, I wouldn't be there, wouldn't I?
Yeah, you probably wouldn't be eating there.
Very
right?
true.
So
actually, it's common misconception. Most restaurants are actually really doing the right thing. And the funny thing is, the number one complaint I get from the general public is, I saw so-and-so handling money and then handling food, or not changing their gloves. And I would urge the public, say something. Every small business owner wants their business to be well received. They want people to be happy to be there. If you see something that ought to be corrected, chances are the owner wants to know. They want to fix a problem. They want you to be happy with their product. They want you to come back. It's great that people let me know, and I bring it up with restaurant owners and restaurant staff all the time. But obviously when I'm there, it's not unlike a police officer with a speed trap. Everyone's going the right speed when they go by there. So.
Right, sure. Now, when you do find something, even if it's not a major, how does that get remedied? Is it sort of thing where it's just educational, and you say you need to change this, and
you work with the restaurant owners. Again, no different than with the public. They want to do well. They want to be well received by the Board of Health. So let's say there's a non-critical violation. A critical violation would result in a restaurant closure.
What's a critical violation?
A critical food not being stored, chicken being stored above 40 degrees. That would be a critical violation. That chicken, first of all, exactly. I would order that thrown out. Seafood stored improperly, I would immediately order that material thrown out. And the restaurant would most likely be closed down until we get to the source of why isn't the refrigeration at the appropriate temperature. Or if I ever caught a restaurant serving undercooked fish or undercooked chicken, that would be a critical violation. Immediate shutdown.
It's a public safety.
Exactly. Unclean working surfaces. If I went in and the surfaces used for food preparation would be inappropriate, immediately, that's it. Doors closed, and we stop right there. Not having hot water. Unless they switch to paper goods and things of that nature, which has happened once in a while during the power outages, when you don't have hot water and employees can't sanitize their hands. For example, a pizza facility could stay open because you are allowed to prepare with your bare hands, say, a pizza, because it's being cooked to 500 degrees for over 10 minutes. There is no public health threat there. And then they can use paper goods to serve. But if you can't clean and sanitize your dishes, if you can't clean and sanitize your hands, there'd be no ready-to-eat food. You couldn't make someone a sub safely under those conditions. So that would result in that facility being taken offline until that situation was remedied. So those are the things that would be bad. But let's talk about a non-critical. What might I see that wouldn't result in someone being shut down, but it really needs to be fixed? Let's say a food preparation counter was in disrepair. Maybe it's stainless steel and it's safe and it's clean, but the edges are broken or the back edge is beginning to delaminate or something. That would be something, I see this, I observe this is inappropriate, I need this repaired, cleaned, replaced, whatever, before the next visit. A refrigerator gasket is beginning to fail. The refrigerator's staying below 40 degrees, great, wonderful, but perhaps that it's showing signs of fatigue or age. That would be something I'd say, you need to repair the gasket or replace this refrigerator. And that's something I would just simply say, I don't want to see this on my next visit, so please remedy it by then. And it would be noted on the report.
Do you write up something, a list of this is what you need to address? We write up a report of anything that is insufficient to be addressed before the next visit.
Now, if I go back to an establishment and I'm seeing over and over again the same sort of, we'll call it carelessness or lack of attention to detail, that's going to result in a more serious violation down the road, failure to maintain your food service area or whatever else, and that could result in some more serious ramifications.
Other than shutting down a restaurant, are there sanctions or fines or penalties that can happen?
Not that we've ever done it.
Extreme cases?
At that point, if you got to that thing, you'd be shut down. And no restaurant facility is going to stay shut down because they would lose money and lose their shirt. So really that is, if you asked what the nuclear level is a critical violation, close the doors. As far as finding money, no, I've heard of it being done. It's never been done in Pembroke to my knowledge.
But generally, restaurant folks are pretty cooperative with you?
Absolutely. And again, people watch, again, we'll pick on Gordon Ramsay and Kitchen Nightmares.
Kitchen Nightmares.
I have never encountered a restaurant owner that was belligerent or combative with myself and or the Board of Health. Most of them, again, these are small business owners. They want to make money. They're in business to make money. They want people to be happy. They want a positive reputation. So I've never been confronted by anyone who said, no, I won't fix that, or get out of my establishment, or anything of that nature. I'd like to think that's also partly due to the fact that I try to help them. I try to say, listen, do this, do that. You don't have to replace a whole refrigerator unit. I know that's thousands of dollars. Replace the gaskets, replace the compressor, and try and come up with solutions that aren't, the multi-million-dollar one that they can't afford. Most people are really happy about that.
Do you ever, talking to your fellow health agents in other communities, other parts of the state here,
yes,
stories about,
yes,
other towns
yes.
we won't name, but you may not want to go to a particular restaurant? Or...
You do, but honestly, the economy, any really bad stories I've heard, the economy has taken care of, not unlike any business that doesn't do well or doesn't do positive business. The economy's done more to shut those down. Places without good reputations soon don't have customers and then soon end up closed. It's a matter of fact.
And how often do you have to do the review?
Twice a year. We try and get them done twice a year. I would be lying to say it's done every 6 months like clockwork. That's not how it works. I might be in an establishment one day. I might not be back for 8 months, but then I might go in again in 3 months, especially if I observed anything that was a cause for concern.
How do you have time to do all this on top of all the other things you do? You just have to kind of fit it in? And
you do the best you can. And honestly, that's a situation facing every community. I'm sure you're well aware of. That budgets are tight, state funding is less, tax revenues are down. So every community out there is making do with less. So you do the absolute best you can. It's a lot of running around. It's a lot of extra hours, and you do what you can. You do what it takes to get it done.
So talking about another fun topic, we'll shift gears a little bit. Toilets, septic systems. We're talking about the good stuff. So your office is also in charge of Title V inspections.
Correct.
Tell us what your functions are there.
So most homes in the South Shore area, there's very few sewerage systems on the South Shore area. Pembroke has none.
Has none.
So every single toilet, if you would, in Pembroke is hooked up to a subsurface disposal system, or an SAS. So what that basically is, obviously a large leaching field underground where the wastewater is dispersed into the earth. The exception being, actually, interestingly, Pembroke schools are all of the size that they actually have an on-site sewerage treatment facility.
Oh, okay.
Fun fact.
Didn't know that.
Yep. So each one of them has a maintenance program and a facility that actually treats the water before it's discharged because of their size. So when you get into owning a home, obviously you want a good functioning septic system, and if you go to transfer your home, you need to have an inspection of that, which is called a Title V inspection. And God forbid, if your home does fail a Title V inspection, you have to replace your subsurface disposal system, your septic system.
And so your office has to sign off on these inspections?
Every single one, yes.
And what is a perk test? I always hear about the Board of Health and the perk test.
Perk test, everyone gets confused by it. It's no different than your coffee maker, your percolation coffee maker. A perk test, short for percolation, is just simply to see how fast the water moves through the sand or material in your yard. Sometimes you have good material. Pembroke is, knock on wood, blessed with mostly sandy and good material. The big problem we have in Pembroke is you cannot have a percolation area, a septic system, so close to the groundwater that could possibly contaminate the groundwater. You need 5 feet of separation. So in Pembroke, sometimes you'll see those raised septic systems that everyone's so afraid of, where you have to bring the septic system up out of the ground a little bit to keep it that good separation from the groundwater.
Well, that's a good time to pause on.
Good segue.
We're going to take a quick break.
Okay.
And we're going to come back and we're going to talk about another interesting topic, mosquito and ticks and all the things we have to worry about this summer when we go in our Pembroke pond. So we'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Cutler Corner with Representative Josh Cutler. My guest again is Lisa Cullity, Pembroke Town Health Agent. We just had an interesting discussion about restaurant inspections and
Yes.
septic systems.
Yep.
I wanted to touch on a couple of the other aspects of your
Sure.
job because you have a multifaceted kind of job.
Yes.
One is emergency management. That's a particular important role, obviously.
Yes.
Tell us what your functions are in terms of emergency management.
Sure. After 9/11, the world changed, obviously.
Yes.
But part of what changed is the CDC, in conjunction with all states' health departments, in Massachusetts, of course, being the Massachusetts Department of Public Health, started to outline strategic responses to specific threats. And because some of those threats involve obviously chemical agents or biological agents and things of that nature, they started involving health departments. Now in Massachusetts, in most states, they use a county-wide government for this. They have county-wide health departments. Massachusetts, being the Commonwealth of 351 cities and towns.
We have to do it our own way.
Yeah, exactly. We have to do things differently. So what that necessitated is the Massachusetts Department of Public Health forming overlay districts or groups of towns, usually by county. For example, I'm a member, of course, of the Plymouth County Emergency Group for Health Agents, which we meet once a month to discuss responses and how would we be prepared if we needed to medically treat or give prophylactic, an antidote of some kind to our entire population, and how would you go about doing that? It's a massive undertaking. For example, in Pembroke or Duxbury, you'd have to treat 20,000 people, and under the CDC guidelines, they would want that treatment to be able to occur 24 hours after incident, and they'd want everyone to be treated within 48. So we work diligently with planners and groups and MEMA of how would we accomplish all these things? How are we prepared to respond to that? The other facet of the job is obviously mass care and sheltering. If we were to have a massive traumatic event, God forbid, that how would we respond to triage beyond what the hospitals could take as intake, and how would we shelter people if we had hurricanes, tornadoes, massive snowstorms, as you're aware,
yes.
and how would we respond to giving people a warm and safe place to be? So all of that falls under the umbrella of the emergency preparedness that Mass Department of Public Health is funded by the CDC, and through the Mass Department of Public Health is transferred down to the towns to purchase goods, resources, to hire planners to help write a plan, to respond to things of that nature.
So that's obviously hopefully something that won't come up too often, but
I hope it is the biggest waste of time and money. I sincerely do.
Something that unfortunately does come up too often are mosquito and tick-borne illnesses,
Yep.
Triple E, West Nile virus,
Sure.
Lyme disease. Those are things that we're very much concerned about
Yes.
this part of the Commonwealth, and obviously we're in this summer. You know, it's a major concern.
Yep.
What can you kind of walk us through that and tell us what kind of
Sure.
things you're involved with in terms of trying to combat those concerns?
Sure. When you talk about infectious diseases, obviously that comes under the care and control of a board of health to follow them. We are unfortunately unlucky in the sense of we have a very high mosquito population in southeastern Mass. While it's a beautiful and wonderful place to live, all these lakes, ponds, swamps, streams create a nightmare as far as controlling any kind of mosquito or tick-borne illness. So when the summer rolls around, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when are we going to start to see the West Nile and the Triple E emerge. And
can you give us a quick, without getting too detailed,
Sure.
a differentiation of what West Nile and Triple E and Lyme disease are?
Just two different diseases, two different mosquito-borne diseases. West Nile and Triple E. Triple E is neurological, as is West Nile. Triple E is for most people the more scary of the two because there are fatalities associated with it. Both are difficult to recover from. Then you have Lyme, which is carried by the ticks.
Ticks as opposed to mosquito.
More ticks, usually less fatal, although it can be fatal. The problem with Lyme is it's hard to detect. Again, neurological based, and it will attack you over time, and if it's not detected, it can be very degenerative. I know a couple people that have lived with Lyme disease, and it causes permanent brain damage. It's a very serious thing, but that is strictly tick-borne. Anything that basically takes blood from a human being can transfer these diseases. So what you want to watch out for is obviously if you see any alerts. Plymouth County Mosquito Control is an enormous part, and it's funded by the towns that buy into their program, that go out and catch mosquitoes and basically blend them up and go looking for the agents that cause these diseases. And once we start to get hits, as we call them, we start to get positive pools or samples for Triple carefully, the state will slowly increase our level of alert. And this is where I think the state does a pretty nice job in working with the different mosquito control groups of the different counties and keeping track of this and raising our alert in very simple 5-step process of how scared do we need to be of whatever, which then dictates the town's responses to restricting outdoor activities. But anyone that wants this information can go right on Mass Department of Public Health. They have a fabulous website. It has its own search engine. Not only can you search all these diseases, what causes them, how to avoid them in simple to easy to understand fact sheets, but they will also give you a map of where it's been, where it's prevalent. Everyone's always concerned with their home community. Well, I'm sure as your kids now start to play soccer, as my husband's children did, you have to be concerned about where it is in other communities. You find yourself playing after-school soccer games. Maybe your community doesn't have a problem, but maybe another community does. Wealth of information there.
So when you get this information, you get, there's a concern, let's say there's a concern in Pembroke, you have to sort of sometimes be the bad guy who shuts down the field at a certain hour.
I am the bad guy. Everyone can blame me. I'm okay with that. I am the bad guy that has to make the call.
How do you make that call, and what's it based on?
Sure. It's going to be based on the alert level by the state. Usually heightened alert, we don't go ahead and shut down. The level 1 is being very little threat. Level 2, we don't usually shut down, but we'll recommend that groups that can curtail their evening activities do so, and that coaches are always encouraged to encourage the children and the parents to put, bug spray in their bag, make sure they have it and are wearing it. It's when we get to that second step where we now actually are seeing positive samples in more than just 1 or 2 isolated areas. That's where we get to curtailing activities, and we will generally tell people to get off the playgrounds, the soccer fields, the basketball courts 1/2 hour before dusk is what we consider the safest way to do it.
And so that will be a call that gets made based on information. And when does that typically happen? What part of the summer is that most likely to happen? It
can happen at any time, but it generally we start to see it around the end of July. If you asked for a benchmark, that's when we start to see it, but it can happen anytime. It can ramp up at any time. Once it's there, it's there to stay until the first killing frost. So once we have those higher hits, we're pretty much stuck with it.
First killing frost would be like talking in the fall, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's when the mosquito population gets wiped out. As I mentioned earlier, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when we see it, and then it's a matter of how fast is it spreading, how fast is it moving.
And what can be done? I know you mentioned the Plymouth County Mosquito.
Sure.
They come in and they do some spraying.
They do some spraying. What a wonderful, I can't plug enough how great that organization is and the amazing works that they do. They will come and spray. The state is the one that makes the call on the aerial spraying, but Plymouth County will come in and do ground spraying. If resources and time allow, you can call them to say spray your yard if you're having a big event. You can call them if you abut wetlands or other swampy areas to have them come out. Again, as funding and time allows, they try and comply with as many public requests as they can. If we go into that 3rd and 4th state of concern, that's when the state will consider doing some aerial spraying, as occurred a couple years ago. But Plymouth County Mosquito Control is really the quote-unquote feet on the street for the South Shore area.
When we talk about aerial spraying, you always get some folks who are concerned about not wanting the aerial spraying, just being concerned about that. What is there a danger with the spraying, and aside from the mosquitoes?
Every chemical has obviously things to be concerned about with it. Obviously chemicals that were used 40 and 50 years ago we now found are very harmful, and who knows what we'll learn about what's being used today 40 and 50 years from now. But the way the state looks at it, they're using the safest things that they know to control the mosquito population. They're specifically using agents that target specifically mosquitoes. They target the time that they're flying, which is dusk, which is why all that spraying is done from dusk to night. That's when the mosquitoes are the most active, to target those creatures. And the risks of what is associated with anything that's being used are nominal in the state's opinion, in the CDC's opinion, and particularly nominal when you consider the dangers of Triple E and West Nile. When weighed against a disease that literally does kill, you have to say, okay, there's maybe some small amount of risk associated with these chemicals, but the risk of these diseases far outweigh it.
Now, as far as Lyme disease goes, obviously that's not treating Lyme disease, because that's a tick, not a mosquito. So how can we combat Lyme disease, and how can people...
You're on your own with that one, unfortunately, because a massive wipeout of ticks would be an enormous undertaking, but there's some simple steps you can take to safeguard yourself and your family. One, wear the DEET. It does help repel the ticks. They don't like it. It's not as effective as on mosquitoes, but nonetheless, it's a good step. The other thing is stay covered up. Wear high socks, wear long pants, especially if you're going to be out in tall grass. If you have pets, check them routinely for ticks. Use the front line, the Advantix.
What's that stuff you squeeze in the back?
Yeah, exactly, the front line.
My wife won't do that. She always makes me do it.
Yeah, but again, of course, if you have a pet and your pet's bringing in ticks to your home, that's not good. So it's good to protect your pet, not just for your pet's sake, but to keep them from transferring the ticks into your home. So.
And am I correct? Deer ticks are more
they're the worst.
Most
they're
common?
the most dangerous. Yep.
So those are the ones that are the smallest, that are harder to
And if you have deer, as we do in southeastern Massachusetts, you have deer ticks just because you haven't seen them. The danger of the deer tick is it's so much harder to see. You know, the dog tick is pretty easy. Everyone sees them. Oh, get rid of the dog tick. The deer ticks, they're a lot more elusive, so you have to be particularly careful. Wear hats. Cover up your hair. Again, spray yourself. Wear long sleeves. It's going to sound mundane, but shower routinely and really, scrub your head and your hair, things like that. Because then, if you're scrubbing your hair and you're getting all soapy, one, it will dislodge ticks or anything else. But also, you're more likely to tactile. You're going to feel them, and you're going to be like, hey, that's a spot that's not supposed to be there. So if one is accidentally on you, you're going to find it right away.
And as far as the ticks go with the deer, I mean, is there things we can do to reduce deer populations?
As far as the deer population, no. My understanding is in Southeast Mass, though, and you'd have to check with Fish and Game and Wildlife, but they are considering opening up some areas to deer hunting to help control the population. But as far as deer and deer exposure, obviously keep the deer out of your yard. Don't grow plants that the deer want to eat if you don't, want them in your yard. If you abut conservation area, that's more of a concern than, say, if you're in a development. The other thing is keep your grass short. Make your yard unfriendly to ticks. Keep your grass on the shorter side. Don't have a lot of overgrown vegetation where the ticks can hide out. What the ticks want to do is they want to climb onto a piece of vegetation and hang with their little legs out and kind of swipe and grab onto you as you go by. That's why when you find them, you usually find them from your knees down, and when you've been in long grass. When they get in your hair and stuff, if you've been in not forested areas, they like it a little more sunny than that, but they're clinging to something and you go by and you get them on the hair. That's when you have to be the most careful. And of course, they're coming off the deer's bodies, so generally mid-level to us is where you're going to see them the most.
So those cute little deer that you see that you think,
they come with some drawbacks. They come with some drawbacks, the deer do, yeah.
Well, one of the things I wanted to talk about, you kind of mentioned some related topics, is Pembroke has a tremendous number of ponds.
Yes.
It's a big part of it. It's one of the great quality of life issues. Living in Pembroke is all about ponds.
It's all about the ponds.
And I just recently attended a meeting of the Pembroke Watershed Association. I know you work very closely with them.
Wonderful group of people.
To try to clean up our ponds. And there's always perennial issues with hydrilla, blue-green algae, all these things I'm learning about.
Every pond in the Commonwealth has issues.
What's going on? What do you tell us about what you can do to help?
Sure. There's a lot you can do. One, join the Watershed Association. They are a self-funded fundraising group, all of their own, and they actually do great works without even the town getting involved. For example, a lot of the pond testing and monitoring that is being done by this group directly, funded by them, money's raised by them. Actually, they have treated Furnace Pond independently of the town for the last couple of years, all self-raised. So the biggest thing you can do if you want to help the watershed is individual Joe citizen, is join your watershed. Whether it's Pembroke, Halifax, Hanson. I know Halifax is forming one. I think Hanson is as well. But join your watershed. Really important. Because these people, and by all means, if you have the time, help them. Volunteer a few hours. Clean up your own, if you're lucky enough to own waterfront, clean up your own waterfront. It makes a difference. It really does. Get the vegetation out of the water. Cleaning it up from trash, debris, anything else always helps the water. The problem with any pond, and scientifically, you've probably heard this before, eutrophication, big fancy word. It just means every pond naturally wants to fill in. It naturally wants to become a meadow. Of course, for us as humans, we don't want this. We want nice, crystal clear, down to the sandy bottom, no pun intended. That's what we'd like, but that's not what nature wants. So we as humans have to intervene, and the things that you mentioned, the hydrilla, that's an invasive species, the blue-green algae, it all survives off of material in the water column, so we want to keep that stuff out of there.
Well, that's probably a topic we could talk about for a whole show. Unfortunately, we think we've run out of time, but we certainly cover a lot of material today.
Sure, yes.
I want to thank you so much for joining me. And
thanks for the opportunity.
Maybe we can do this again in the fall and talk some more about this stuff. But thanks so much for tuning in, folks. You've been watching Cutler Corner. I'm State Representative Josh Cutler, and have a great day.